Welcome to the Vermilion Podcast, a free audio library of business strategies, creative inspiration, and industry knowledge for actors, filmmakers, writers, and anyone looking to activate their creative potential. I'm Misha Calvert, a writer-director who helps artists build the careers that they dream of. I really hope that this podcast inspires you in some way. Thanks for tuning in. This week, we're going to talk about decisions. What is a decision? What does it mean to decide? And how can you make better decisions? This sounds very boring, but it's actually fascinating. And I want to make sure that you walk away from this episode with some more tools on how to go about decisions in case you have any big ones. You know, we're at the time of filming, we're approaching the end of the year. And it's a really powerful time for decision making. So I just want to make sure that you feel good about the decisions that you have ahead of you. So while I'm going through this episode, I want you to have at the front of mind something that you really, really want. Something that has been on your desire list for a while, could be big or small, but something that's really important to you that you want in your life that you don't currently have in your life. We're going to be working with that, and it's going to come into play with this conversation around decisions, because chances are there's a decision in there that isn't yet been made. I want to start with a really edgy concept, which is that the reason that you don't yet have what you want is because you haven't decided that you want it. What does that mean? Let's start with the word decide. Let's define our terms. So the word decide comes from the root word decidere, which is Latin. And the faraway origins of this word started with something that means literally to cut off. Decide, to cut off. That's the Latin root of the word decide. So with every decision on something you want, you're cutting off all the things that you don't want. If you want to say yes to something, that means you have to say no to something else. So I kind of want to invite you to embrace an aspect of violence with this word, or perhaps discomfort, something that is a closing of a door, a severing of possibility in one area in order to create possibility in another area. Like, it's not always going to be happy, kumbaya, peaceful energy. There's actually a certain violence to making decisions a lot of the time. And that's okay. Violence is also a part of nature. We see violence in nature all the time. Animals attack each other. Trees die. Hopefully not from deforestation, but just naturally things die. So embrace that a decision that you need to make might have an aspect of this cutting off energy. There's a lot of other words that have that same suffix as decide, C-I-D-E. What are some other words that have that suffix? Not to be too grim and scary here, but homicide, suicide, a lot of other words, right? So this word that we're dealing with, decide, in some ways, it's a death word. We are killing one thing in order to give life to another. We don't need to over-focus on that, but I also don't want to ignore that energy, because I think if we ignore it, then we can actually get caught in indecision because we're not willing to kill something. So death is really weird. I don't like it. It freaks me out, the idea that you can never get something back again. Like, I just really hate that. I'm not sure that that's actually what happens when we die, that, you know, something goes away forever and can't be brought back. But that finality, whether it's real or not, I think is what gives a lot of us pause when we are forced to make a decision or faced with one. We don't want something to be final forever. We want to be able to still have options and still be able to get something back. We don't want that loss. Also, what if it's the wrong decision? Then you can't go back and fix it later. So I want to just put the brakes on that death energy for a second and say that with a lot of decisions, you actually can go back. I know we were just talking about all of the cutting off required for decision making, but there's a lot of decisions where you can return to baseline. Things like quitting a job, leaving a career. Well, you actually can usually go back to that job or that career, at least that industry, if you really want to. Stopping hanging out with a friend or a family member. Well, a lot of times you can rekindle that relationship. You can start hanging out with them again. So I think that you can, in a lot of cases, resurrect a decision that you're scared to make. It's okay. A lot of times it's actually not final. And sometimes it is final. Divorcing somebody, spending a whole big chunk of money, going to jail, turning someone into the cops, sometimes saying something really truthful and hurtful, maybe, like you can't unsay it, right? So sometimes you can't go back. And it's important when looking at a decision to be realistic about, can I go back on this or can't I go back on this? Which one is it? And that might help you to make that decision with a little bit more wisdom. But for the decisions where you can't go back, where it does feel really final, a lot of times those are the ones that are harder to make. Ask yourself, how much death energy versus life energy is there in you keeping things the way they are and not making a decision? How much death energy are you perpetuating by not making the decision versus deciding to whatever it is, cut someone off, leave a job, etc. In your lack of a decision, are you hurting yourself in order to not hurt others? Another question. Are you avoiding a decision as a way of enabling others to depend on you? Been there, done that? Are you avoiding a decision in order to make yourself indispensable? To feel needed? To not be alone? And a lot of times, a lack of a decision is actually a decision in and of itself. So you're making a decision either way. It's like that thought experiment about the train that's gonna go off the track on one rail path and it's full of people and you're in charge of the path of the train, so it's headed for a cliff, or you can divert the train and run over a person that's on the track on the other path. Which would you do? Would you allow the train on its current course that has nothing to do with you run off the cliff? So that's making no decision. Or would you make a decision and choose to divert the train to run over somebody on the track but save everybody on the train? So the lack of a decision in that case is still a decision because you're going to allow 40 people to die versus choosing to manslaughter one person on the tracks. For me, I'm going to kill the one person on the track. Now, that thought experiment gets kind of crazy. You're like, well, what if it's your mom? So you get the point that the lack of a decision oftentimes already is a decision, and you just need to be honest about that and take responsibility about the fact that you are still making a decision. You're choosing not to act. Here's a crazy one. How are you choosing, potentially, the things that you don't want through indecision? How are you choosing the things that you don't want? I do this all the time because I say that I want a career as an artist, and yet the little bits of free time that I do have when I can and should be dedicating it, you would think, to creating art or building my career, I wind up doing everything but. Doom scrolling. It used to be like stress eating, cleaning my apartment, which it's already pretty clean. Like it really doesn't need more, not every single dish needs to be done all the time. But filling my time with things that are an indecision. They're a decision to not pursue what I know I need to do as an artist. And that in and of itself is a way of avoiding. It's a way of avoiding that bigger life, that bigger dream that I say that I want. So I've got a little exercise for you. So grab a pen and paper, and you're going to make 2 columns. And this is really going to help you figure out what decisions need to be made to get the things that you want in life. So start with the thing at the top of your list that you want the most. This is going to be a column of things that you want. Put the thing that you want the most at the top, and then other things underneath that that you also want. Make the whole list. You can pause the podcast if you want. And then on a separate column next to it, you're going to start to list, 1 per line, something that you know you need to cut off in order to get the thing that you want. So let's say that I really want to create time to focus enough to start writing more on my screenplays. One thing that I know I need to cut off is the continuous nonstop admin on my business. I need to no longer allow myself to be responsible for all of that admin. It can be hard for me to delegate, so I need to bring someone in to take more of that admin off my plate. If I want lower cortisol levels, I have to stop doom scrolling late at night when I'm supposed to be getting ready for bed. So I have to cut myself off from doom scrolling on the internet. So do that column, all the way down. One thing you have to cut off for everything that you want on your list. And then the trick is you got to do it. You actually have to do it. Can't just be stuck thinking about it and talking about it. You have to take action. I really wish you luck in this decision making. My goodness. New Year's is such a ripe, amazing, powerful time for decision making. And I really hope that you can use this exercise and get what you want, because I want you to have what you want. I want you to make decisions and be decisive and, cut people off if you have to. Hey, 'tis the season. Happy holidays. And I can't wait to see you all next week. Good luck.
The Vermilion Podcast is sponsored by Vermilion, a home for artists. We offer classes, coaching, and community for creatives and innovators in the arts. If you're ready to find your voice and build the life of your dreams, we're here to support you every step of the way. Check out clubvermilion.com and schedule a free call today.